Yes, everyone, welcome back to Blues TV Media. I'm recording this post-match review for yesterday's dreadful match versus Ipswich. Shout out to my boy Kashi for requesting me to do one of these. So let's jump straight into it. I'm not gonna beat around the bush with this at all because let's be honest, yesterday's match was absolutely pathetic. It wasn't anything what we demand or want from a Chelsea team at all. This sort of form has been going on for a while. It's been a matter of years where, we've been out of the Champions League race. Yeah, we've been told to believe in this project that the owners and the sporting directors have got lined up. But yesterday was an all-time low, and I think now it has to sink in that this is a bit of a reality check because let's be honest, the only reason why we were in this top four slash top five race for the past few weeks, months, let's be honest, is because the standard and the quality of the Premier League has just massively dropped off. We've had teams that, you know, just haven't kept up to the pace. City have had a massive drop off with their whole 120 charges and the ramifications of that. You've got Aston Villa who have struggled with the balance of Champions League and Premier League at the same time, and their form has been a bit patchy. Newcastle, their form has been really up and down this season, but it looks like these other teams have figured it out. They're starting to build a run of form, and it was only, to be honest, with the way we were playing, it was only a matter of time before we dropped out. And now we are sitting in sixth place. We've got Newcastle, we've got Man City who have leapfrogged us, we've got Aston Villa right on our coattails, and they've all like for the right reasons, they've all like turned their season around, and it looks to me as if us as Chelsea, we're in a bit of a downward spiral at the moment. Let's, rather than running off with the whole like we're out of the Champions League race and everything, let's talk a little bit about the game. It was dreadful. It was a disaster. The first half, I don't know what's been going on with the way we've been playing in first half matches. Uh, I recall we recall back to last season under Pochettino, and there was a lot of question marks raised that why is it when we're coming out for the second half of matches, we were starting the second half really poorly, and that was like a common theme under Poch. Uh, that we would just lose concentration. We would come out the first 10 to 15 minutes of the second half, we would concede sloppy goals, uh, and then we'd have an all right performance the rest of the game, and that really just defined our season, and we were picking up poor results because of that, largely because of that 10 to 15 minutes. Recently, I'm saying, and I'm wondering why is it the same case with Enzo Maresca? Not that we're coming out for second half support. I feel like he's addressed that, when we come out for the second half, and we saw that yesterday, where even though we were 2-0 down, that we came out with a bit of urgency. We came with a bit of threat, and we, performed to better levels than what we're expecting. But why does it seem like a common trend under Enzo Maresca? The first half of whatever we play is pathetic, it's slow, pedestrian. Players are just lazy. There's a lot of passing around the back. We can't really make any input on the game. And furthermore to that is, we have not seen goals at all within the first half since I think uh I had it loaded up. It was Southampton. You know, we look in recent weeks. We had the game against Copenhagen in the Conference League. First half of even in the Conference League, first half against Copenhagen in second leg, we had things. First half against Legia Warsaw looked we really didn't look at the races. You know, no goals against Brentford and Arsenal. We couldn't score in the first half to save our life against Spurs. And when you track it back and you look at the history of this has been ongoing. And the last time we scored a first half goal was against Southampton, and that was at the end of February. So what is going on with Enzo Maresca's first half? That's the first thing that really needs to be addressed at because, in my opinion, we need to start the games off strong, kill off the opposition, so that, we can grow into the game and sort of, especially against these lower class oppositions, when we play in the Conference League, when we play teams like Ipswich, Ipswich almost done the double over us, and that is, you know, that's criminal, when you consider like the status and that we are Chelsea Football Club. Aside from that, the defense was absolutely pathetic, especially in that first half. Not closing down the Ipswich players when they were hitting us on the counter attack. I'm not gonna give Sanchez a lot of slander because we all know as fans that Sanchez really isn't at the levels, and there's always a mistake in him waiting to happen. But uh, watching that first half, question marks do need to be raised on Sanchez and the decision to play him. Uh, you know, we were told Sanchez was brought into the club first of all for his distribution. We were told he keeps getting selected because he can distribute well. Well, all I ever see him do, and uh, all I ever see him do is ever play it around the back. It's one of three things. He either gives it to a defender and puts the defense under pressure. He gives it straight to the opposition, or he plays it long. And rather than identifying his man, it just goes out for a throw in. And we saw it in the first 10 minutes of the match. We saw him play a long ball, went straight to, I think it was in Ciso or one of the other Ipswich midfielders, and they took a crack at goal. We saw him play long balls, and it would just go out for a throw in. And I think one other criminal thing, and we don't see it enough if you watch the highlights or if you watch the game live on TV, but when you're in the ground, it becomes very apparent, and a lot of fans, I've seen it when I've been in the ground, that you can see players are attackers. It'll be one of our wingers, it'll be a Neto or it'll be a Jackson or a Palmer. They're making a run in between the defense or something. And you want your goalkeeper to pick the ball up quickly, play it long, identify that man who's making the run. And Sanchez takes ages on the ball to make his mind up. He will then either play it long and it'll end up out for a throw in, or he'll play it short to one of the centre backs. And you've got on the opposite end of the pitch, you've got one of our attackers making a brilliant run. And that is another problem which I think when you watch it live on TV, for example, because the camera angles are such that you can't see the whole ground. But when you're in the stadium, you can see that that is an apparent problem. But I wouldn't go as far as I think Sanchez is definitely a problem in the sticks, don't get me wrong. But I don't think he was largely at fault for the two goals we conceded yesterday. That's all down to the defence. I don't know what's happened to Levi Colwill. He looked like a really solid defender, and the levels have just dropped from him. He looks really shaky. And then him and Tosin together, it just doesn't seem like a combination that's working because none of them closed down Cisa for the goal. The whole defense, we can blame the whole defense for that. But the second goal, lethargic, no one's closing down their man. Ipswich had all the time on the ball, really. They throw a ball into the box and they score. I thought that was criminal that we conceded that and we were relying on VAR to rule it out against Ipswich. That it's just not the levels we should be seeing. But that first half really defined the match going forward because then we were always on the back foot. Yes, we did have opportunities to attack in the first half, but we never looked like scoring any. And I'm not going to put the blame solely on Jackson or, you know, Madueke or one of the wingers for not putting the ball in the back of the net because we know like Jackson had that chance and it just skimmed wide of the post. But we know that Jackson's finishing is not a star. He's definitely one of the best players we can stick at the moment at that striker position, but I wouldn't say it it was necessarily his fault in the first half. Second half was better in the sense that we got the goals. We came, considering you're 2-0 down, if you have to be 2-0 down, what's the perfect response you want from the team? You want them to attack really quickly. You want them to go at the goal and try and push for a goal. And we got that. We saw Madueke run at the defense, put in a teasing ball into the box. We had Cucurella there, who who might have got a touch on it, but it ended up going off Twanzebe and going in the back of the net. Goal is a goal. We need that goal to get back into the game. And when you look at how dreadful the first half was, that was almost the perfect response, in essence, from what you want from the team. We got that quick goal, and the objective of the second half should have been to build on that. Now, why did it take us all the way till the 79th or 80th minute for us to get the second goal, which was the equalizer? Where was the urgency? Where was the finishing? Where was any of that? And we can call out some players for having poor finishing and stuff, like Jackson for missing chances. Neto was a bit unlucky. Uh, the Ipswich goalkeeper had the match of his life. The wrong Palmer had the man of the match in essence, because our Palmer was just not at the races yesterday. What is happening with the finishing? And you can call out one player for having poor finishing. You can call out the recruitment that we're not recruiting good finishers and stuff. But surely at one point you have to drag it back a bit and then have a look. What are we achieving in training? Because surely one of these players, if you are really working on the finishing, should then be able to develop their game, put chances in the back of the net. It's almost like sometimes the midfielders are scared to take a shot. We barely, apart from Madueke, we barely ever see any of our wingers take a man on or take a shot. Uh, I guess you could give Neto a bit of an exception because Neto's been a bit diverse. He's played multiple roles. We've seen in recent weeks when Jackson was out, we've seen Neto play up top and on the left. Neto sometimes will have a crack at goal, and that's what we need from our players. But in past games, Sancho hasn't taken his man on. He hasn't taken the shot off, and it's incredibly frustrating. And then when you see a player who looks like he wants to get a goal in Madueke, and we saw Maresca decide to take him off, I think that was a bit of a questionable decision at the very least. That why are you taking Madueke off when he looks like one of our only attacking threats who looks like he wants to get a goal? And you bring on someone who's been criticised in recent weeks in Jadon Sancho. And I believe when that decision was made, there were a lot of boos ringing around the stadium when that happened, and rightly so because Sancho just had that. That was a very questionable decision. You're taking off a player. I understand you might want to manage minutes with Madueke, but it seems like he's coming into his own. There didn't seem like an immediate injury threat at that moment. And what's the bigger concern? Madueke getting injured for the remaining 6 games of the season, or us not getting the winner and dropping out completely out of this Champions League race? Because what's the point in having Madueke fit if and threatening to score goals if we've got nothing to compete for? So that was a very questionable decision. What seemed like the pressing concern, prioritizing minutes or really trying to get a grasp on trying to qualify for the Champions League. We did see Sancho come on, and to his credit, he scored a wonderful goal. Top bins, top corner. That's the kind of finishing you want from every man in the team, and that's the kind of finishing. That's the kind what we've wanted from Sancho in recent weeks. We've wanted him to cut inside. We've wanted him to take the defenders on and take a shot at goal. And we've seen when he has taken shots on goal, he has put it in the net. Yesterday was a prime example. He put it top bins. That was an excellent finish. I got no, uh, criticism for Sancho there. We saw at the first half of the season, he scored goals against teams like Spurs. We saw him get assists against teams like Bournemouth. He has been there in amongst the action. So fair play to Sancho for putting that top bins. And this might be a good time to address the rumours, but we've seen this week that rumors were coming out on Twitter or X pages that, um, and it's regarding Sancho's future, that if Sancho performs between now and the end of the season, depending on his performances, depending on how many goal contributions he can get, depending on how much he can influence the team, that will be the deciding factor whether we decide to keep Sancho or whether we send him back to United. And since those rumours have come out, we saw him get 2 assists midweek. We saw him score a wonderful goal. And, those are signs that the form is starting to turn. Now, yes, granted, it was matches against Ipswich and a Conference League match against Warsaw, but you can only perform in what's put in front of you. Like those are the matches we've had come up. They've been lower level opposition. Uh, ha- we will see whether that will continue in the rest of the season because we have got some really challenging games. And if he can pop up and get contributions against Liverpool, if he can do well against the low block teams, which, you know, he was praised for the fact that he can do well against a low block, and we've got tough games coming up like Everton, Forest, who will sit back. There will be a bit of a low block, and if Sancho can perform in those games, then yeah, sure. Then you could then rightly so, there should be a bit of a discussion that should we keep Sancho or should we send it back? But in all truth, this is a bit of a wake-up call because the top four fight realistically, or the top five fight, is over. Newcastle are on an incredible run of form. They completely tore Man United apart last night. They haven't really got any European football to worry about, so they're going to go in all guns blazing for the Premier League. I've seen like reels and stuff that they could even challenge Arsenal for that second place position, and if they do manage to get second place position, considering the start of the season they had, what an incredible achievement that would be. But I don't really see Newcastle dropping off, and we've got to play them. Uh, you know, you've got City who, they haven't been the Man City we've known for recent years, but Marmoush looks like an incredible signing. He's coming into a bit of his own. City are picking up some form. De Bruyne is going to want to go out on a high because this is his last year at City. So, you know, City look like they're turning their form around, and you can never really count them out. And then you've got Aston Villa. Aston Villa, if they get knocked out by PSG out of the Champions League on Tuesday night, I think they're playing. Uh, there is a chance they could. It's an unlikely chance, but there is a chance they can go through. But if they get knocked out, they've got players like Asensio, Rashford, John McGinn. They've got Ollie Watkins, who's still in the squad. He can pop up with important goals. He can play well. They've got like other quality players like Marlon on the bench, uh, things like that. When you've got a lot of players like that on form, and if they get locked out of the Champions League, they're going to prioritise their league position enough to fight for the top four, and then Chelsea just sort of drift off beyond. And the honest truth is, the way we've been performing since the change of form around Christmas, we don't really deserve to be in that top four fight. That is the honest truth. And the consequences of this is going to be quite severe, you know. Um, and that is something that just needs to be addressed because it's not just another fact that, we're going to miss out on Champions League football, we're going to miss out on those big European nights. There's other consequences. How are we going to attract, good players to come in the summer where we actually need to reinforce? Like, we need to get that solid number nine who's going to get us goals. How are we going to convince the likes of Victor Gyökeres and Osimhen, even though I don't want him, a Benjamin Sesko or Liam Delap? How are we going to convince those players when you've got other teams in the league like Arsenal, Liverpool, you've got teams abroad like maybe Madrid might go in for one of them, Barcelona. with the aging Lewandowski. You got teams all across Europe who are competing right at the top. How are we going to convince these players like Gyökeres, Osimhen, or you know even players like Liam Delap or Seshko, where they have been linked with other moves elsewhere? How are we going to convince them to come to Chelsea if we can't even offer Champions League football and it's already up and down? And then on top of that, we've seen this season, and I've got the home shirt on to prove it, but we haven't had a front of shirt sponsor all season. And granted, I do like the way the kits look without the front of shirt sponsor. I do think they'd look cold, but financially, the consequences, you know, we were seeing rumors like we were finally going to get a good sponsor like a Qatar Airways or another big airline was competing for the bid of for the front shirt sponsor back when our form was looking good. We were there in the top three of the league. Champions League looked like it was a real possibility. If we don't qualify for Champions League, realistically, what kind of sponsor are we going to get, if any, for a front of shirt sponsor? We can't afford to go a second full season without a front of shirt sponsor because of the extra revenue it brings in and the extra publicity it brings in for the club. Qatar Airways would have been perfect because, they would have advertised us on flights. They're a big company. They would make the shirts look good. Realistically, at this rate, we're only going to get that Indonesian tech firm end up on the front of shirt going into next season. And if we go back a couple of seasons to when we had links of stake being on the front of shirt sponsor and the amount of hate because one, it was a betting company, and second, how ugly we our shirts would have looked with a stake logo on the top. What do you think is gonna? How do you think the shirts are gonna look with this Indonesian tech brand on the front of us? I've seen the logo; it doesn't look that good. It's gonna ruin the shirts, and I've seen the home and away kits for next season. They look class. Nike look like they're finally turned around for the good and designed some good shirts for us next season. Sticking a brand like that on the front is only going to ruin the shirt. I wouldn't want to buy it if I saw that logo on the front. And no disrespect to the Indonesian brand, they're doing what they need to do, and hope they remain successful. But you know, it it would be perfect if we had that, Qatar Airways logo on the front of our shirt next season. And forget the money. Why, if we don't make Champions League football, why would a company like Qatar Airways invest in us when, they're one of the main sponsors of the Champions League? They've got a massive presence in F1 as one of F1's main sponsors. They've got the revenue. They don't need us. If anything, we need them. And getting Champions League is not going to cut it. Based on our league form, I don't even think we would qualify in a Europa League spot with uh, with the way things are going. If I was to give an honest prediction based on the way we've been playing, I don't think we're going to qualify. I think we'll drop off even further. We'll end up finishing the season around sixth or seventh, which is worse than what Pochettino achieved last season. And we're only beating the Europa League because we should really win the Conference League with ease. But even the way we're performing in the Conference League, yes, we got a 3-0 win against Warsaw, but that is uh, if you look at the way we really played, it's not really setting us up with any confidence going forward. So it is a really concerning thing. It's not just because, we look at some of our biggest rivals like Arsenal go on big European nights to smack up Real Madrid 3-0, and we want to be the team to do that. But it's also like financial consequences that we're going to face, and you know, how are we going to attract in big talent when we don't do this? It's going to lead to a massive downward spiral. And, I'm not for any of this. So that's the honest take on the Ipswich game. Yes, the second half was a bit better, but overall it was a pathetic performance. You know, Maresca needs to be called out on a lot of things. Why did we have three right backs on the bench and start none of them? Because I feel if we had a Reece James or a Gusto at right back, and then we shifted Chalobah to centre back and played him either aside Tosin or Colwill, it would have been a better combination than Tosin and Colwill at the back, which has just been disastrous. And then you have to look at it like who's making those decisions. And yes, Maresca can only pick. He might not have a say in who the board sign, but he can strategize who he's going to pick and play better. Because playing three right backs against Legia Warsaw, there was no need to play Reece James in that game, in my honest opinion, when you know the league is a priority. You know, we saw him rest players like Cucurella against Brentford when we could have done with Cucurella starting against Brentford. But then you don't even play him in the Conference League, and then you give him the start today. Like, what is the strategy? One of those right backs, granted, Reece James, I agree, based on his injury record and stuff, shouldn't be starting 2 matches a week. But one of those three right backs should be able to play 2 games a week. Or if not, we've got three right backs. Plan your squad accordingly. Do not play players out of position. Do not start playing Gusto at left back and Reece James in midfield. Pick one of them for each game. Start Gusto midweek. It would probably be good for Gusto to play against lower level opposition, build up a bit of confidence, get his form back on track, then start Reece James in the Premier League. We've also got Achiempo. Shift. I, I think what would even be better than playing Reece James in midfield against Conference League opposition for 90 minutes is shift Reece James to centre back, play him alongside, Chalobah or Colwill, or play three at the back, and then have Achiampong at right back in the Premier League because Achiampong will have a point to prove, and he has really been solid when we've called upon him, and he looks like a talent for the future. So then you have to call out the manager for what the hell are these tactics? But yes, you should expect this because we hired a championship level manager who, yes, he did walk the league with Leicester last season, but in all truth, McKenna had his number last season in the championship, and we've seen it again this season. We saw that Maresca basically had the team that was a class above everyone else in the championship, and he almost bottled it anyway. So was that really the manager we needed in the first place? And then question marks have got to go forward. And I'm gonna wrap up this video with a bit of a conclusion and a bit of a like, what do we do going forward? Not just as a football club, but us as a fan base. And by all means, reel this, crop this, put it on social media, take this bit of the review and post it separately, tag some of the big guns in this, some of the big content creators out there like Joey Knight, George Benson, Eunice, Matisse, Football Yannick, name them. Put it on X, tag, pages which have got big following like Pice, like Vince, Blue Dodgers, you name them, because collectively as fans, we shouldn't want to stand for this, and as fans we need to get our voices heard in the right way. I'm not saying go out and protest, like do violent protests, but yeah, stand outside the bridge before games, bring banners, make voices heard, make some noise, so that like the owners respond to that, so that the board responds to that, so that the media grabs that attention. But also, let's be realistic, because as much as we would, and I've seen some content creators say this, and as much as some fans have said that the owners should just get out. Let's be honest, it's not as easy as a process of just the owners walking out the door tomorrow morning. Let's be real in terms of what can actually happen, because even if the owners do find some loophole to get out, that whole process of leaving the club, selling the club, and finding then a replacement buyer or something, who's going to want to buy Chelsea in this current state? Uh, I'm realistically not sure. Um, that whole process might take like another year or so, even if they start acting on it today. So let's be a bit honest. The owners are still going to be here for a little bit longer, but they haven't shown any signs that they can change up till now. They've stuck with the same model. They've stuck with the same directors. But let's start applying the noise. Let's start making our voices as fans heard from now and use these main stream channels, these content creators that I mentioned before, get them tagged in the comments of this video, get take this section of the video, post it as a reel or a short video, get them tagged in it so that they can share it further. Us as fans, we need to start making some noise. You know, if you're going to the games, and maybe um we should make a separate video on this about why Maresca should should be gone between now and the end of the season. But I will say this, that look at the comments on what he's made at the end of the game. You know, rightly so, as a Chelsea manager, he's been asking the fans who are going to the games to make some noise, to get behind the team, cheer them on. But first of all, and I've been at the games, if you want us to cheer the team on, give us something to be excited about. None of this passing around the back, passing to the wings and then passing back, because the fans are not going to cheer you on for that. Secondly, if you're going to provide us with first half performances that you have done since the Southampton match, of course the ground is going to be quiet. Of course the fans are going to be disappointed in what they're going to see on the pitch. Then you come out after yesterday's game and say the reason why Sanchez has been playing poorly and the reason why we conceded two goals is because the fans were quiet, or the fans were all of that. What planet are you living on? If and one of the main reasons why I think Maresca needs to go now is because he's turning on the fan base. He's calling out the fans rather than addressing the actual problems that are within the squad. Yes, the fans need to be loud, but provide us with something to be excited about. Provide us with something that, even if we are losing or drawing matches, but you can see that we have some identity, we have some intent, you know, we're trying at least in the matches. The fans can get behind that, but dull, boring first halves. You know, I went to the Conference League match against Copenhagen and I took one of my friends with me, and he's not the biggest fan of football. But he wanted to go and be part of the vibes. And he comes out to me after the match and says, "What the hell was that? I was expecting, there to be some loud atmosphere and, some really nice atmosphere." And he was looking at the Copenhagen fans and he was like, wow, they really brought it to that match. But he was like, I was expecting more from a Chelsea game. And I was like, to be honest, I would want more as well. But you need to look at the way the players were performing and look at the way the managers set them out. The honest truth is, it was pathetic. So why would the fans then get loud? But us as fans, like, we need to start making noise. We need to start highlighting the issues. The board realistically are not going to sack Maresca between now and the end of the season. But what can be done is, uh, you know, us as fans, we need to make our voices heard that Maresca is not fit to be the Chelsea manager. If Maresca is going to fight back against the fans, we need to prove that that's not the solution. We need to give it back to him. So the people who are going to the matches, make some noise. If you don't want to chant against the team going forward because they're not playing well, make chants against Maresca, make chants against the board, make something that people within the stadium are actually going to notice. Make banners, make tifos that actually highlight the issues. Call out the board. We saw the protest before. I think it was the Southampton game back in February, but we saw the posters and stuff that was being made. Why not make a tifo then and call out Maresca or call out Winstanley and Stewart or something? Make a tifo like that and hold it out for everyone to see. Then it's going to be on, mainstream TV. It's going to be on the live broadcast. It's going to be on all of that. It grabs attention, and then the owners will then have to respond to that because then it's being publicized and put out everywhere. And you know technically they can't stop us from putting out a TIFO or something like that. That's going to be something that is you know going to force change in the right way, in my personal opinion, and get the voice out heard so that these fans who go to the matches, you know, can share it, get them to stand out, make some noise before the game, because realistically, that's what's going to get through to the owners, in my opinion. Let's be honest, the owners aren't going anywhere soon, but if we can get them to change, realistically, what should they do between now and the end of the season? I think they should sack Maresca, get in someone who's going to stabilize the ship, even if it's a case of sacking Maresca, calling in Tommy Tuchel, like uh, we know you got the England job, but do you mind coming in? We made a mistake with you when we sacked you unjustly the first time. Do you mind coming in, steadying the ship a bit? Do something like that. Or call Jose, who's, um, struggling out in Turkey, or like I wouldn't say he's struggling, but the board and the way the corruption in Turkey is sort of getting under his skin. Be like, why don't you come to a place you know you will be loved, get the fan base back on our side again, and steady the team, steady these young set of players, so that when we do find the next right appointment, you sort of like pass the baton onto them, like sort of steady the ship and then pass the baton to the manager who can realistically take us forward. I think one of the biggest mistakes the board made was, yes, they fired Tuchel unjustly, but look at the managers they were linked with. You know, we on one hand we had top class managers like Luis Enrique who managed Barcelona, and then on the other hand, we had managers that they were linked with, like Pochettino and Enzo Maresca, which is the honest truth of what we were left with. But if you look at someone like Luis Enrique and what he's doing at PSG, PSG are sort of adopting the model that we want. They're bringing up the youth with players like Zaire Emery, Desiree Doué, Barcola, you know, Kvaratskhelia, players like that, but they're actually getting a job done. They look like a serious threat for the Champions League, and that all credit needs to be given to Luis Enrique for managing that. But he was a manager that was linked with us. That was one mistake the board made, you know. And then you need experience around those young players as well. What would be a good way of the board making things right? Getting in some experience this summer, finally getting the deal for Osimhen done right. He would be a pivotal player at the front of the field that can get us some goals. And we've seen that he does have a passion for Chelsea. We've seen rumours this week that De Bruyne um, is going to leave City, and the rumours are coming out that he might stay within the Premier League. Snap De Bruyne up as a free agent. Finally make it right. Finally make up for one of like the Abramovich era's mistakes, where we let De Bruyne go. Bring in a player like that, who he can then guide a player like Cole Palmer going forward, or other players in the midfield like Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo. You know, though that's the sort of thing we as fans should vocalize a bit more, and then get the board to recognize it, because let's be honest, the board selling the club, letting go of the club, that's going to be a long process in itself. That could go on for years to come, even if they started acting on it today. And if they don't change and things continue the way they're going, things can be even more disastrous next season. So, yeah, definitely act on this. The fans who are going to the matches, make it really toxic make it really toxic for people like Maresca and the board. Make If Maresca's not going to be sacked, make him walk. Make him quit the job, or force him into making changes because of how toxic the atmosphere is, how much you're being called out and stuff. We're seeing opposition fans do it. We're seeing Spurs fans do it with Ange Postecoglou, and it's really getting under Ange's skin. So do the same with Maresca. That's what I would do going forward. Um, put your thoughts down in the comments, and hopefully the season does take a turn. Peace.